am delighted to be talking today to Patrick Kirwan, a teacher in Ardskol at Namara, which means big school on the sea, I've just found out. And Patrick is not only a teacher, he's the director of the Irish School Sustainability Network at secondary level. So welcome, Patrick, to Teaching for Sustainability.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Meryl. It's lovely to be here.
Fantastic. So I've got a few questions for you. Now we know that there's changes in the UK SSN. What are the latest developments in the Irish School Sustainability Network? Do you have any plans for COP29? What's going on?
Well, there's lots going on as normal. And I think the biggest we're kind of like well, we all have the challenge of trying to win hearts and minds. So we're trying to just constantly thinking, how do we do this within the education system? So for COP, we have a climate nature summit every year that's happening, and it's just basically an opportunity to partner with different organizations and to develop online workshops. So one of the ones it's all about back to basics this year, because sometimes we think we go too far and we lose some people. So but one of the workshops we've been dying to do for a very long time is on recycling, because people overestimate it as an action. Well, it's a low impact action. People overestimate it as a high impact action. And so I'm so excited to finally debunk some of the myths around kind of recycling in Ireland.
Good.
And
Yes, it's about stopping buying so much stuff more than anything. Yep.
yeah, so it's really that's really nice. And that's like, that's the Climate Nature Summit isn't a silver bullet, but it kind of helps teachers who are starting off to just foster some up to topical conversations about what's going on at the moment. The other kind of things that we're looking at is well, we've got a CPD schedule, a training schedule for teachers, and we've got an election coming up in Ireland. So we're going to be talking about like what can we do in our schools around politics. And lastly, we're piloting an online digital platform with an education organization called Education for Sustainability. And that's like basically trying to help people who are just starting from scratch. Like, how do we do this? And so we're marrying this platform with kind of monthly support meetings and just seeing how it goes, and is this useful and helpful for people? And there's some case studies there. So we're
And
looking at it along.
and most schools expected to have some sort of sustainability lead now.
No, it's not an expectation. So but what's interesting is there are more schools that are coming on board and appointing someone with responsibility for sustainability. And as a network, what's really interesting for us is that essentially it's slightly odd the way these things work in Ireland, but I think it's the same in the UK. The staff identify the needs of what coordinators are needed, and then the position is given to someone. But they might not have any knowledge or interest or passion, and they just have
Starting
to
from
kind of.
scratch. Yeah.
So they're asking us, look, they're saying, I don't really know much about this. Where do I start? Can you offer me any help? And we're trying to kind of, yeah, be a little bit of gives them some collegiate support.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So, and it's really good to hear that as a country, there's definitely motion, national, motion towards, getting sustainability in schools. Are there any sustainability projects in your own school that you're working on that you'd like to share?
Do you know what? There's a few things going on at the moment, but one of the things that is consistent and is worth sharing is our environmental leadership development program. And that's something that I started off in Hammersmith Academy in the UK in London, and then replicated in Nordskull. And I really love it. It's kind of like it's a bigger beast here, because we have this, and I hate saying that we're lucky to have this because it just should be standard in all schools. We have this commercial sized outdoor kind of polycarbonate tunnel. And essentially half of it's a growing space and half of it is for workshops. So we train a leadership team in delivering 1 hour workshops in the classroom, and first, second, and third year students, which would be like year 8, 9, and 10, have an hour in the outdoor classroom every month. And there's a kind of a set curriculum.
Yeah.
So they get to do nature-based practical activities in a carousel where students are leading on those and they've been trained to do that. And then they also get kind of facilitated conversations around lots of different topics on sustainability. And I love it because you know that this is a solid education that people are
It's
getting.
giving them skills. It's giving them all sorts of skills. You know, space outside, that time growing plants, that time networking and talking, using tools. Creative thinking, all sorts. And I mean, I have to say, going back to your work in Hammersmith, you do sell yourself short. You are an award-winning, teacher, and have done so much to show what's possible in schools. A real beacon of joy. You've brought me joy, knowing what you're getting up to. So, it's just wonderful to know that that is continuing. And I know how much energy it takes. So, kudos to you and the school for supporting that work.
Well,
Um,
do you know what? That's just to say that's the interesting thing is that actually, thank goodness that I have a senior leadership team who do support it because there's lots of principals out there
well,
who
you would
where
but you just
staff
don't work. Yeah, you end up not working in those schools. As someone who cares passionately about environmental education, you just say, well, I don't want to work for you because you're not going to support me. I've been very lucky myself, and I don't, but I did move on a school because they weren't willing to do that. So, I think if you're passionate about sustainability as a teacher, you do need to think, I'm not locked in one place. I can move, and there are other schools who would embrace that, and let you have all of the adventures and advanced learning that you can put into place if you have that freedom. So in terms of what in Ireland, obviously I know very much what's going on in England, and not necessarily always great. But what are the current expectations for schools to deliver climate literacy and global citizenship education in Ireland? What are you expected to do?
So there are levers in the system to promote sustainability, which isn't a priority for principals. So there's one looking at our school's framework with statements of practice, and there's one statement which says that highly effective schools, and I was delighted when this came out in 2022, highly effective schools promote and prioritize education for sustainable development, and it's shown as a core value in the day-to-day running of the school. But that is one of 72 statements. So it's, there are lots
You
of
might
things.
get a tick in the box, but it might, yeah, okay.
And then there's a strategy to 2030 for ESG, but the implementation of that strategy, it isn't funded, which means that it's just very, very, very slow progress. Now, actually coming back from the UK, which was, really extraordinary for me, is that the junior cycle program, which is similar to kind of GCSE, but it's a level down. Same year groups, but they don't learn as much. Essentially, ESD is woven into most of the curriculum areas, and it's brilliant. But the message isn't landing with the students because teachers basically haven't connected to it
Yeah, I was going to
personally.
say it needs those connections of all teachers talking at the same, which is why things like the sustainable development goals are important, because then they can at least see some consistency. Um,
It's not, I think if you want to teach this effectively, you have to win hearts and minds. And I think once, because it's interesting, I think people can know that some bad stuff is going on in the world and we need to do something about it. But once you've actually really internalized that knowledge, and when you you've put on the lenses then and you see everything through, climate and nature and it just bleeds out of you, it seeps into everything that you do, and I think until we reach that point I don't know if we're going to get
the
the effect.
action, no. And even then, you talk about kids making change makers, but unless they can actually change the systems that are causing these problems, it's not about individual action at all. It's about the whole picture. And expecting, as they say in our climate sustainability strategy from the DFE, oh, we need to create agents of change, but the governments aren't letting them change anything. So, and no, they can't even protest. So no, I go around in circles sometimes. But it
Yeah,
sounds
well, I
like
think, yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say that I think it's. I mean, I think we as teachers we can mobilize people, and I've seen lots of anecdotes from teachers where they say students have gone home and they've said to do X, Y, and Z at home because a teacher has basically given this knowledge and experience, and that's amazing. And we just need to have more of that. I think we can.
And actually taking action means that they, I've been talking to lots of people about climate education, and it's, it's not even feelings of anxiety, it's feelings of sadness that they've been let down. But by allowing them to take action, something, whether it's to do a trash and show, or whether it's to do an assembly to parents, at least then they feel like they have a voice. And I think that's the thing, as I found as a teacher, was to give them a voice, to show people what's possible. But as you say, to then embed it in their heart so they feel and breathe it. If you actually give the kids the option of a vegan meal and a meat containing meal, they'll, even if they've learned all about meat and how damaging it can be, they'll quite often still choose the meat. So there's a disconnect there to say, actually, we can take our own action, and the more people who do it, might make a difference. Yeah, it's a difficult one. There's lots of challenges, but it's lovely to know that you've got lots of different strands doing things like the training in school, giving students opportunities to learn in different ways. Fantastic. So next year, I hear there's a new leaving certificate being offered on climate action and sustainable development. Tell me a little about the course, and is it going to be rolled out to everyone?
So it's going to be piloted in 40 schools first, and we're one of them. I'm actually curious to see if the students are going to opt to study this. I mean, that's a big decision for
And which
them.
age group is it aimed at?
So it's similar to A level,
Okay.
basically. That's our A level equivalent here. But it'll be a brave thing for them to take if they're looking for points, to get into certain courses, because it's a new course and they're not sure where that fits with other courses. But essentially it's visionary. Like, it's amazing. Like, it's so unique because it's got a strand on kind of science and earth. It's got a strand on politics and social change, a strand on global citizenship. And then there's kind of applied learning tasks. So it's very unique. Like, there's no other subject that is as interdisciplinary in nature and helps them to kind of connect the dots between lots of different things. And it's also, will offer them kind of a profound learning experience about what's going on. And that is going to be very difficult because I think teachers are going to have to manage their own emotions while helping students to navigate theirs. And so I think the one criticism I would have of it is that there is an action project, and it's worth 40% of the course, but it's only given 20% of the hours. And I think that's a
That's
missed
then expecting students to spend more of their own time to do it, which is effectively punishing them for taking that course in some ways.
Yeah, and it's kind of it could end up in tokenism, and I think that's actually really important to actually help them to mitigate, their anxiety. But again, I just think anyone who has done a meaningful action project, year in, year out with students would look at that course and think that's just bonkers. Like, that just doesn't work. And I think that there's a lack of experience there in actually running that.
But as you say, the 40 schools and as a test, see how it goes. It's always interesting with things like climate action because it crosses different subjects. So you've got science, you've got geography, you've got potentially history, you've got all sorts of things that could take part in it. And then it's the managing of those courses that can be challenging to the schools. A tricky one.
But I would say it's a step in the right direction. But I think I think everyone should be entitled to this education, not just the kids who basically opt for it.
But also, if you're talking about kids thinking about the future and maybe going off to university in the next couple of years, then actually it's quite likely that universities are changing as well to start putting these sustainability courses in. So I think it was the University of San Francisco has just said, I'm not sure about the university, but anyway, they've just said that everybody who goes has to have a climate course in the scheme of work that they do. So, things are changing, and I think most universities would hopefully embrace it.
Fingers crossed. I think they will. I think it's just about, like, and I haven't delved into this yet, but on an application for university, does the course count as a science subject? Does it, it's only, quarter kind of science in it. So where does that fit in terms of if they want to get into certain courses? If they take that, will they be having to, forget about a science subject?
And we know that, like every other country around the world, that Ireland has its own problems. You know, your level of biodiversity loss is similar to ours in England, and we've got the National Education Nature Park, which is growing. You know, month on month, they're getting more schools involved. That was our friend Jess Tipton who's running that. But I know you're particularly passionate about nature-based education. Is the Taoiseach in Ireland going to support similar movement, try and get nature in schools?
Not that I'm aware of. So I think, and this is, I mean, obviously a huge challenge here because the system hasn't been set up to teach nature. And I think we're still, I don't know if the UK is any different. I know you've got the new subject coming in, which is great news. I don't know if it's in
Oh
yet.
no, no, no. The GCSE in natural history is currently shelved.
Oh, okay, that's not good. Um, well, it's such a bizarre system because I think, there's a recognition now that so Frank Elderson from the European Central Bank has come out saying a common sense statement that without biodiversity, we don't have an economy. But that's new language. And it's something that like we didn't get an education, on nature when I was in school, and the kids still aren't getting it. And we're expecting, like, it's kind of like saying, let's get rid of maths. Let's get rid of maths and let's teach maths through Irish and French and science and all these other subjects. And it's bonkers because the teachers wouldn't have the skills to teach maths within those subjects. They'd never prioritize it above their own subjects. And it would just, the kids would be, numeracy be even worse than it actually it probably already is. So we need to make sure that there is a nature subject in the curriculum, that it's valued as much
and
as
not just sort of key stage, well, primary, sort of early primary, which is where it kind of ends up now. You know, it's just. I was speaking to someone teaching biology, GCSE and A level the other day, and they just said the ecology unit always gets massively squashed because it's quite easy for the kids to teach themselves, so they hardly teach it. When actually, that ecology units are so important to our future, to be sustainable on Earth.
Oh, completely. And I think, if we're serious about nature education, which we should be, then it needs a trained teacher to deliver it. It needs a classroom, and the resources that every other subject has, and I'm thinking obviously with the secondary in kind of mind, and we're nowhere near there yet. And in Ard we have a model for teaching nature, and we're attaching it to a system that is kind of defunct, and we're making it work, but it's not perfect, and
It
it's
takes a lot of effort to try and keep it in there. And there's so many different things, priorities on schools at the moment. You can understand that, a lot of head teachers have not got that space, whether you're here or there. But to get that nature connection back into into education, and to teach people, well, not even back into it, just to get it in there. As you say, it needs a different way of thinking than we're currently on, on our little conveyor belt through school.
just as you're talking, I think the one thing actually which would be quite simple that they could do, changing the curriculum is harder and it's longer term, but one of the things that they could do is just absolutely and utterly transform the outdoor area of a school and actually give a gardener shared between schools or to a school, if it's a big school and there's lots of grounds, at least change the spaces that the kids are in, because wherever you are, in Ireland at least, like I live in the countryside, but nature is in the distance.
Yeah.
When I'm walking down Dublin, a street in Dublin, an old street, I can touch a lovely majestic plane tree, like because it's just
Yep.
taken over the pathway. But in the countryside, you just like you'd have to walk a distance to actually touch a tree because they're they're off in the distance. They're not beside us. We're kind of, oh, that tree is too big, it'll fall down our house. I'll just chop it down
And,
before it
I
gets.
mean, but then so the kids aren't able to touch trees, and actually, ironically, unless they're in a city sometimes, but they can't name the trees. They don't understand what the trees are doing in terms of clean air quality, in terms of biodiversity. I mean, you could spend weeks just studying an oak tree because they're so fascinating. But then what are we going to assess them on? I think that's the trouble, isn't it? Our education systems are so refined to get kids, qualifications, get them out, and so that whole dialogue that you can have that brings joy into understanding about nature is just not, there's no time for it.
Meryl, there's one thing actually I want to share with you, which is like seriously nourishing. Before we go, is that one of the I think I there's a couple of loves that I have within the Irish School Sustainability Network, but this is definitely if I had to say what would I prioritize in terms of the things that we do, it would have to be bite-sized biodiversity. And it's this, so as we're cycling around in the countryside, trying to figure out how do we make it easier for people to teach nature. We were saying, do you know what we'll do? We'll do a 15-minute training every week on a Monday after school. And it's a national thing where we just take one species a week and we talk about how that's connected to other species. And we have a PowerPoint that teachers walk away with outdoor activities and indoor activities that they can do that week with their students. And it's for primary and secondary. And actually, that's been really successful without even much kind of advertising or marketing. So there's like
Bite-sized
last year,
biodiversity. I love it.
yeah, it's so lovely. It's a simple thing to do, I think, and it creates a community every week. And there's about 50 people on the call, and it's really
Oh,
sweet.
um, my timer is about to go, unfortunately. And Patrick, I feel like I could talk to you for days, not even just a half an hour or so. But actually, I think that's given me a lot of food for thought because there's, as you say, things such simple ideas that's just those short bursts of nature education or and those networks that you've built. I just think honestly, you're an absolute inspiration, and it's been a joy to speak to you.